Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Before I even get into it, I just want to say I have a cold and it's ripe. And the person I'm talking to today, I am so excited to talk to her that I was like, Amy, you are not canceling because it could very well mean talking to her in like 2 or 3 months down the road. And I'm just not available for that. So I'm going to do my best to not suck my snot back up into my head on the audio and gross you all out, but I'm a human, so it's probably going to happen. Hopefully that you will just love the conversation anyway, and forgive me because today I have with me Ashley Rose. She is my Instagram friend, and she is an intuitive mixed media artist and jewelry artist. Her jewelry is gorgeous. I think she's wearing a pair of her own earrings right now, and they're just like to die for. Seriously. I don't think I can pull those off, but I'm actually looking at them and I'm like, maybe I can somehow make it work because they're so beautiful. She is from Humboldt County in Northern California, and her primary focus is using crystals and healing stones in one-of-a-kind jewelry and paintings and channeled affirmations and artworks to assist in one's self-healing and discovery. She's a homeschool mom of 3 kids, a wife to a paramedic, and she lives on the coast in farmland and redwood trees, which I know is many people's like literal dream, being in the redwoods. And so welcome, Ashley. Thank you so much for being here. I know that we're going to have a great conversation because we're just always sort of on the same page whenever we do chat in Instagram. So thanks for being here, girl.
Good morning. I love you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. Okay. We have so many things we could talk about, but I would love to just hear you sort of summarize your awakening story, which you described before we pressed record as kind of like a slow burn experience. So it's been unfolding over a long period of time, but you're one of those people that I always love it when you message me because I'm like, oh, she is awake. Like you just see so much. You and I see so many of the same things. So yeah, just tell me about how you got to be at this level of clarity.
Well, I had a pretty boring childhood, a good boring until I was like about 7 years old. And then one day when I was at school around 7, sorry, I'm recovering too. I was running through the schoolyard and I came around the corner and I didn't physically hit this guy, but I almost ran into this guy who was a big, like I was a small kid and he was this big booming figure, but I was thrown back by his energy field. And I was thrown back on the ground and I had in that moment my first ever panic attack. It was just like on the ground staring up at this guy who I wasn't able to articulate it at the time, but he was very possessed, like very, very plagued. And it started at 7 years old. It started panic attacks and night tremors that I wasn't able to tell my parents what was happening. I was just in this like shaking paralysis, but I was seeing these blooming fractal figures that were just telescoping shapes of never ending size and never like this expanding event horizon that just kept coming at me. And it was all that I could see, but I couldn't talk, I couldn't speak. And it made me afraid to sleep. It made me afraid to do anything for years and years until I was maybe 12 or 13. And over that time, I had a couple people very close to me in my life die, like my youngest best friend. When we were 8, he was killed in a car accident. And then just a couple other people right after that. But then I was having these experiences of seeing what I can only describe as person-shaped orbs, like bright colored lights. But when I told my parents about them, they took me to the pastor who was convinced that I was, you know, I was either making it up or having some kind of demonic episode. So they put me through the church ringer a lot. There was a lot of prayer done. And then maybe when I was 10, my dad took me to a revival, I guess you would call it. I grew up an evangelical Christian, so we were pretty boring, just regular Sundays and singing hymns in the church and then a Bible study every now and again. But he took me to a much more charismatic, tambourine pounding, flag waving revival where I don't even really know how to describe it other than, like, if you've seen it on TV, there's a preacher on the pulpit and he's touching people and they're falling down. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So that was happening. And I was seeing people, get knocked down left and right. And I'm like, what is this? Like, are these people making it up? What's going on? But then my dad and I walked up, and I was a born again Christian. I said the sinner's prayer every single night out of anxiety, just to make sure I wasn't going to go to hell. Right. So I was lock, stock, believing in everything, but I wasn't sure what was happening to these people. So my dad and I went up, and we were laid hands on by the guy who was speaking, and I didn't fall down, but I experienced something so intense that my dad and I were immediately, because he experienced the same thing that I did, but we were almost like transfixed in this ray of light that was suspending us. I wasn't holding myself up. I was being held up, but I heard this music that it was unlike anything that you could possibly describe. It was not music. It shook me to the core of my being. And I would say maybe it lasted 30 seconds in real life, but it seemed like hours. And when my dad and I came to, we were both just like sobbing. And it was in that moment that I was like, everything that I've heard about heaven and God from the scary people in church is not right, because whatever I just experienced was not what they've been telling me. So that was around 11. So that was a big catalyst for me. And then at 12, my parents divorced, and it was a cracking open to a whole new life. I had grown up on a dairy, grown up in the church, and then my parents had such a catastrophic divorce that they both got very deep into drugs, like serious drugs, meth and heroin, and
Wow.
not just using it, but selling it, which involved like my parents going bankrupt and losing the dairy that we grew up on. I was homeless for a while, but I was having this crisis of faith, realizing that everything that I had leaned on as a kid in Christianity wasn't adding up to these other experiences I was having with seeing orbs and hearing this music, but then also having this very strange inner lie detector that no one could explain to me. Like,
yeah, you do have that.
It was really raw and really intense in the times when my parents were, like, I was still a teenager, like, 12, 13, 14, when I was still living with them. And I was being lied to on a daily basis about what they were doing or where the money was going or who was coming over. But it was more than just a logical, I know you're lying. It was this, feeling in my body. It was this physiological response, but then there was the really, really intense gaslighting, like me walking down and seeing my dad passed out with a needle in his arm, and then taking the needle out and taking the tourniquet off and calling 911, and then him telling me it wasn't what I thought, and it going on for so long that it caused this split within me, because it was so important to my survival to believe these things that I was being told rather than what I was seeing. So I went through a long period of that. And I think that it was probably the most crucial bit to my awakening once I learned, oh, I'm not crazy. I am being gaslit. I am right about these people. I am right about these things that I'm seeing. I am right about being able to judge a person's character. I know when I'm being lied to, no matter how small it is. I know what it is that what I'm seeing. It was such a freeing thing to understand, and then to connect the pieces all together. I feel like I was given a box of, like, a giant 1,000 piece puzzle that had no picture on it. All the pieces are white. So my whole life I've been trying to put this puzzle piece together that didn't have a picture. And then eventually, probably around after my Saturn return at, like, 29, all of the pieces, like the picture, showed up on the puzzle, and I was able to put them all together. But the severe gaslighting and the trauma that went along with my parents being such severe addicts, I believe, was probably the biggest catalyst in my awakening. I make a joke that before we incarnate, there's like a sheet that you fill out when you go to the deli and you get a sandwich, right? And you want white bread, or you want turkey, or whatever. So we fill that out with our desired lessons or experiences, and then it shapes what our incarnation, our karma is going to be like. I know that I was just like signing up, checking the box for every last bit of trauma that I possibly could. But it provided for a really, really good foundation for what's happened in the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah, no doubt it has, because I mean, I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, that must still even be with you. And like, I wonder if it's even possible. I mean, I don't want to put this on you at all. This is literally just me wondering, but if it's possible to even like not carry that with you in a way where like it's embedded in your nervous system as some kind of first response for the rest of your life, because I think it's extra hard when we're being lied to by our parents, but especially like when we're gaslit in that way where they're not, it's never about comparing anybody's traumas, but like when, say, somebody that you love when you're a child, so we'll say your parents, is outrightly abusing you in a way that is undeniable that it's abuse, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's easier to deal with that, because that's not what I mean at all, but at least you have that piece of the puzzle, like, it's abuse. But when it's like lying or deceit, or anybody you love, it doesn't have to be your parents, but especially when you're a child, I'm just thinking about the bond that we have with our parents as children, where we love them. And so we gaslight ourselves because we do not want to believe that that is how they are showing up in our lives. And we don't even realize we're gaslighting ourselves, because it's just like you said, it's a survival thing. We have to rely on them when we're minors. It's just a lot. That's a lot that you went through.
That was, that's just like the Cliff Notes version. It was so made for Lifetime TV. Like the day of the day of my senior year, when I was supposed, like, everyone gets awards and scholarships or whatever on this day. I got called to the office, and the cops were there, and they're like, "Hey, so you're gonna need to arrange, like, transportation, because," and then they told me that there had been a bust at my house that day, like the Drug Enforcement Agency, like SWAT team, basically busted my dad, took him to jail. I had no one to like get me from school. My mom was who knows where or whatever. And it was just one of those moments when you see it in TV, like you're standing still, but everybody's moving around you in slow motion. There was just so many of those moments throughout the years. Like, my dad got one of his girlfriends pregnant, and then as soon as the baby was born, she took off. So when I was 15 and my sister was 13, we alternated staying home from school to take care of this baby. My brother, who was a crack baby, or he was addicted to meth, so he was a very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, difficult is not the right word, but he was colicky, and he cried all the time, and he was in pain.
Yeah.
And it was a lot for
Wow, Ashley.
it was a lot for a kid. And then on my deli sheet, I signed up for a sexual assault at 18, and that plunged me into a really dark place because I turned to the people that I went to church with for help, and they went full like victim blaming, and I was asked to leave the church that I'd been in like for 18 years. So it was just another like complete disillusionment. But I had to have all of these false foundations fall apart so that I could stop looking outside myself, because that's been a big struggle for me.
Right. So like where has this led you to where you are now? I mean, like I can sort of surmise myself because we've had some conversations, but also that's the very, very tippy tip of the iceberg. But like, how would you describe where you are now and like what this awakening has meant for you and how you reconcile having checked off all those boxes on your deli, sandwich prep sheet?
Just this morning, I said to my husband, I was like, I know this sounds wrong because I know that like life is, for a lot of people in the collective, life is really heating up right now and things are changing rapidly and drastically. But this is the most calm that I have ever been in my life. This is the most settled and at peace that I've been. But it's because the last like probably since 2012 was like the real, like the final, I guess, the last boss level until 2020, like 2012 and then 2020 were really big for me in regards to awakening. But in that last 10, 11 years, I've done so much excavation, so much shadow work to get to this place of being calm. But I think it was in 2017 that a relative of mine was in a car accident on my birthday, right outside my house, on like 30 seconds away. He was in a car wreck and he broke his neck and became a quadriplegic, and called me in the middle of the night, basically to come watch him die. So I went down to Sacramento with my husband, but he didn't die. And, it was a week or two of living, will he live, will he die kind of thing. And then he pulled through, but he pulled through with a pretty damaged psyche that he ended up turning on all of his family and everyone who was there for him, and became like a shut-in. And that sent me into like my real dark night of the soul. I'd had lots of bits of trauma over the years.
Yeah.
But that dark night of the soul where like suicidal ideations on a daily basis. And this was only like 6 years ago, like not able to get up off the floor, not able to eat, not able to sleep, just true, like if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And it was only from there that it was when I first heard your Killian story a couple years ago. I was like, oh yeah, she knows. It's when you have really gone to that darkness and then the light opens up for you. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. That I had that moment in 2017. So that's when really the pieces woke up. The pieces got put together and I woke up. So it was after that dark night of the soul, I started piecing back my life. I started, meditating really seriously. I started doing yoga. I started reading Eckhart Tolle and Conversations with God, and everything that I had always thought and suspected finally made sense to me. And I found a community, I found you. I think I found you in like 2019 or something like that. And all of these people who were saying the same things that I was saying and thinking the same things that I was saying or thinking, and who had gone through similar experiences, to allow them a perspective in life that I could align with and that I didn't feel crazy about. So that's been the last couple of years, which has led me to the spot of finally feeling like, oh, I'm out of fight or flight. Things make sense. Things can be crazy, but I'm not worried about what's coming.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I'm like wow, we were pretty much going through that like dark night of the soul at the same time. Cause like, I mean, mine happened when Killian, like it started with Killian in 2016, but I feel like 2017 was like when I was really, because I had to just accept that my partner was not going to. Some people want to try again right away, and I wanted to try again right away, really because I didn't want to go through that dark night of the soul. And like my crazy brain was like, just put another baby in me, and it's like it'll be like it never happened, which of course is not at all how it would go. And luckily Alex had the sense to, and he didn't have all the hormone stuff that I did, and he was like, no, that's not a good idea, that's not how it's going to work. And 2017 was where I just really had no other choice to be in it, and I just like was like, all right, I guess I'm in it. And it's almost like a whole bunch of us signed up for this to be like around the same time together. Like we're here for a reason, and we're doing this for a reason. That's really how it feels.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
I also feel like you were mentioning on something recently. I don't remember if it was an energy report or a podcast, but you were talking about for a chunk of time, a lot of the energies that were coming in and being channeled were like Pleiadian.
Yeah.
And now it's more like Lyran or, so I've noticed a lot of that in maybe, I don't know if influencers is the right word, but people who will channel or who go through big spurts about talking about, basically trends in, trends in spirituality. That sounds wrong, but like incoming energies or trending energies, I guess.
In consciousness expansion or consciousness upgrades, kind of.
Yes, thank you. I feel like for a while, maybe since I really started paying attention, I guess from 2000 or 2012 to 2020, 21, there was a lot of people in the forefront that were like ahead of the energies and able to say, hey, this is what's coming. And now I feel like a lot of people who've woken up in different chunks until then, everybody's on a level playing field now. Like there was a lot of people who were, I guess, getting really good, really well, pure channeled information and almost ahead of the game. People who you've mentioned, like, be very, very careful with your discernment, pay attention who you're listening to. I don't really believe that there are too many people who have knowledge that's even listenable right now, because I feel like things have been leveled out and we're all at this spot. We're all at the same spot where we're like, what's coming now? But nobody knows. Previously, people have been able to feel into it, and now I feel like nobody knows.
I totally feel that too. And it's even changed in the way, like, for example, like for me and the things that I'm wanting to create this year, I just feel like rather than wanting to tell people what's coming, even though I can feel sort of what, or my own, impressions of what 2023 feels like, even I think through to like 2027 is where I can feel. But it feels to me like more like I'm supposed to just call you all out and be like, come on, we got to do it. We're building a telepathic network. It's time now. We're here. We are on the same playing field. Like, you don't really need me to teach you anything per se. It's like, we're all supposed to be sharing these codes with each other.
It's super, super important to call the people who can vibrate and think in those ways together in the same room, in the same group, in the same container. Because when we're thinking together, when we're meditating together, when we're working on something collectively, the amplification of that is not just like, it doesn't just go from 1 people to 5 people. It magnifies exponentially so great when it comes to healing or bringing things in.
Exponentially. And I got this vision, I guess it must have been maybe in like November. about, I don't know, I just got this awareness, like I just felt a bunch of you all in my field, and that exactly, like we're on the same level. We've all caught up to the same place. And could suddenly sort of like see how we are creating the reality that we're moving into. And I always feel frustrated because I feel like the English language makes it sound so cheesy when in fact it's like profound. It's absolutely profound. But it was like this, I don't know, this visualization imagery field that we're all telepathically linked to. And it's extremely important what we are visualizing together. And that there was a time where it was important for us to mostly do it on our own and do shadow work. And like, even if you were, meditating in a group, it was more to like adjust your vibration to that level. And like, it was about our self-work. And I feel like now a bunch of us I truly believe that shadow alchemy process is ongoing, but we've alchemized enough of it that now we're supposed to link up together and be very, very intentional about the thought field that we are creating together, because it is a reality and it becomes realer and realer the more of our collective energy we put into it. And it's kind of the way that we counteract all of the predictive programming that we're constantly bombarded with. It's like unavoidable because I feel like it's unavoidable because we're also not supposed to be in isolation. So it's almost like if you completely go offline, you go like literally off grid, and you're, doing the sort of the root chakra living, the homesteading, completely independent. I'm sure there are some people that are coded to do that. So I'm not trying to like say that nobody should do it, but it takes us out of the power that we are collectively. We're supposed to be doing this collectively, and we have to pick together what we are projecting onto the hologram, rather than just taking it in all the time through social media and commercials and news media and truther media and entertainment media and everything. Like, that's how they're feeding shit into us that then we project out onto the hologram. And we're supposed to basically like become stronger than that, so that we can still glean the codes of truth that are delivered as disclosure in all of those forms of media, and be very discerning of what we are projecting together onto the green screen of the hologram so that we can create it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years, like in the mainstream, whatever you want to call the garbage, the mainstream news or whatever, about, the potential for things like parallel societies because of what has happened. But then, the age of Aquarius that we're coming into is all about community. And something that I see, I don't know if it's called a Venn diagram, but it's like the paper that has all the circles on it, and then circles are connected with tiny lines. Mm-hmm. I see these, collective consciousness pods, like what you're always creating, popping up in different locales around everywhere. They're more and more people are waking up, so it's becoming more frequent. But that we're all spread out. Like, how many people really have awakened, like truly awakened friends, like a whole pocket of them in their real life? So we're creating these mental and, sometimes physical energy fields, because what does physical space even really matter? I mean, so we're creating these little communities, and then through the really high energy, we're connecting, telepathically to each other. Mm-hmm. And it's like magnets almost, when you drag the magnet thing around, and then, tiny little bits of the magnet dust get automatically sucked up into it because of the collective suck of the larger group.
Yeah.
Collective suck is not the right word.
The
magnetism.
magnetism. Yeah, totally. I think that's an amazing way of describing exactly those little filaments, those little iron shavings get like pulled into, which is why what we're doing is so important. And like, I guess I'm just reiterating this for anybody who might be listening who, is going through a moment, which I think we all do, where it can feel sort of hopeless or feel overwhelming, or especially people who, like, I'm always so thankful that I chose this mission of like being a speaker and showing up on social media, because it gives me something to do, something to channel it into. But I know a lot of people are not, that's not their dharma. They're not supposed to be visible. They're not supposed to be like course creators or whatever. And so it can kind of almost feel like, am I even doing anything? And I'm just here to say, like, yes, you're doing something. You're doing something so important and so powerful. And exactly, the more we link up together, the more, just like you said, it amplifies exponentially. And that magnetism draws other people in who are sort of teetering in that vicinity. And I feel like for 2023, I mean, we're in March now, the month that feels very combustive to me. But in 2023, I just feel like so many people are going to awaken that we didn't even, like, it has been easy to just write them off. Like for the last couple years, we've been like, you're a lost cause. It's hopeless. You're never going to see it. And I feel like a bunch of them are going to awaken, and they're going to be like, literally like Neo, puking on the ground. And we're going to be like, I got you. Like, let me hold your hair back. I'm going to orient you to this whole thing.
I absolutely feel like that's where we are. I fully I was with a friend the other day. She is my one in real life awakened friend. She's actually taken a couple of your courses too, but I was talking to her about just some different things that she has going on in her life. And I was just, giving her some advice, and it was landing with her, but it was making her emotional, and she was like processing it as we were talking. And then she said something like, I can't, she's like, I feel like I'm not giving enough to you in this friendship. And then she caught herself and she's like, but I'm listening to what you're saying right now. And in listening to heart-led advice, I am, I'm validating your energy, and I'm giving you a healing in the way that I am receiving a healing. I'm like, yes, that's what we're doing. This isn't like a transactional space. We're all lifting each other up so that we can be lighting each other up in that way. Mm-hmm. But then she illuminated to me something that I'm really delighted to be working through, is I fucking told you so.
And you must have that, because you see things so clearly, Ashley.
Oh, it's not attractive. It's not an attractive quality that I have, and it comes from that gaslighting for so many years of like, I know what the fuck I was seeing. And it's bigger now because it wasn't just my parents. Now it's this, these are millions of people, and everybody, for the most part, everybody in my circle was following this one thing. And now a lot of people, even if they're not necessarily waking up, they are waking up to maybe some things aren't quite adding up and things aren't making sense. And I have pierced my tongue many a time just trying to swallow I fucking told you so. And even if I didn't say it in a, you need to listen to me kind of way, even if I just presented information or, something like that. So that is what I am getting to notice within myself as a delightful shadow. But it's reminding me that I haven't had to do serious shadow work in a minute. That was the serious shadow work and clearing out, I felt like for me was a couple years ago. And then things have been okay for a minute, but this isn't a one that's really showing me that I have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm
I
likewise doing some very serious shadow work right now too. That is a yeah, it's funny. Hey, it's like it's not humbling insofar as like it's not like I thought I didn't have shadow work left to do, but I did get a break from it for a while. Last year didn't feel like too much of a shadow work year for me. It felt like just fucking channeling so much information I couldn't even integrate it. And then and this year feels a little bit like, okay, right. Yeah, this I remember how this feels. Yeah, it's humbling.
yeah, I thought I had this figured out. I was being so mindful. Whack.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's always a good smackdown.
it is.
I am also recognizing, and this is just having to do with current energies, I'm doing a lot of root chakra repatterning on myself too, because of being raised in the church and recognizing the similarities between things that I see now and associating them with, you know, hellfire, brimstone, revelation, and the eschatology rapture that my dad always, you know, poured on us growing up, trying to recognize the energies and coming at them from a place of love and not fear.
Well, I mean, I would love to hear you expand on that because as you know, I like went through a whole thing in November and December where I like woohoo really came up close to Christianity or like organized Christianity. And like to be truly honest, I almost jumped ship to the like I almost did the new age to Jesus things. So I came like to the teetering edge. And what ultimately pulled me back from that edge is how judgmental the new age to Jesus community is. Where I was like,
Did you do any looking
so
into Doreen
spiritual.
Virtue?
I don't really, I mean, I remember hearing about her a few years ago and I kind of listened to her, one of her interviews, but it wasn't one of the ones that got me. Mostly I binge listened to testimonies from just average people. But it was important because I really needed to see how much infiltration there was in this like non-religious, more open spiritual forum. So I feel like that's why I was drawn to it. It was almost like a compulsion, like I could not stop watching them. And I also it didn't feel like a self-destruction thing. It felt almost like my guides, but it was probably myself was being like Clockwork Orange, like force your eyes open and see it. You have to see it. You have to see how much deception and how subtle and seductive it is, how much deception there is in the sort of more new age spiritual movement, but also totally jumping ship into Christianity isn't, at least for me, there's just too many problems. There's too many problems that I see that I can't resolve. But I would love to hear it from your perspective because I had a very gentle experience of Christianity growing up. It never felt like hellfire and brimstone to me, and it never felt forced on me. And also I was like never deeply studied in the Bible. Like I had to memorize certain like, the 23rd Psalms and stuff for my Sunday school plaque. But I'm always really interested to hear from people who have had a more intense Christian background, kind of like how all of that lands and processes.
Well, I was raised in a non-denominational evangelical church. So as basic run-of-the-mill Christian as you can get, nothing crazy. But it was with severe anxiety that I said my prayers every single night. And, do you know what the sinner's prayer is? Like I said the sinner's prayer every single night, basically just to cover my bases because I, every sermon every week preached about hell and the eternal separation from God. And I was already anxious. And I think that, had we had Instagram psychologists back in the day, I probably would have been diagnosed with ADD or OCD back in, or tendencies anyway, back in the day, because I was so anxious that I would do flip my light switch 60 times when I said the sinner's prayer, just to make sure that my parents weren't killed in a car accident type thing. But it was this fear that God was going to take them away and do something bad to me because I was bad and because I had sinned. And so it was a lot of fear. And I was a good Christian girl. I did not mess up. I did not lie. Whenever I did, I was so overcome with guilt that, oh my God, I would just turn myself in so quick. But then when my parents got divorced, what started their divorce was my dad having an extramarital affair. And then I think for maybe a brief period, they tried to reconcile or something like that, but it wasn't okay with the church. So one Sunday, and my dad had been a deacon, like an elder in the church, he was taken up, like he stood in the front of the church, he confessed his sin and he apologized. And then the preacher basically said, we denounce you from our family, we denounce you from the faith until such a time as you decide to make it right, and your soul is to the devil. They threw his soul to the devil while I watched. And it was after that he really fell into a place of drugs and darkness. And I remember thinking, wow, there was so much power in either everyone's belief of what this man said, or my dad's belief in what this man said, or, this is how these demons showed up for him. But I remember, this is not Christ. This is not Christ's love. And then in the years that followed, it was, because I grew up in a very small community. The community never showed love. They only showed judgment when it came to anything, not just my family, but there was not support. There was not love. That pastor who ended up throwing him out, or, excommunicating him from the church, ended up leaving and was replaced with a much better pastor. But none of it affected my faith in God, but it changed the idea of the kind of God that they were telling me was real, because my experiences did not, like what I felt when, not the sinner's prayer, but when I would pray and I would feel relief, and when I would just talk to God, or I would be having anxiety and I would, ask angels for help, what I felt and what I knew to be true without having a reason for knowing it did not align with what they said and what they were preaching. But my dad maintained his faith even after he left the church. And he was always a eschatologist, which is basically just somebody who studies the end times in the Bible. And so that's what I grew up hearing about. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I realized that not all people who consider themselves Christians know what the rapture index is, which was a book then eventually turned into a website, but it was a daily prediction based on the happenings of current world events, the likelihood of the rapture happening that day. Like,
what? I've never even heard of that. That's so intense.
You can Google, it's still a thing. You can Google the rapture index and it will tell you what the percentage of the rapture happening today based on what's happening with China or what's happening with Russia. And so that idea of this is not, be in this world, not of this world, this is not our home. This is a temporary experience. Jesus is calling us home. That was the constant pervasive background. Yes, it's important to do good and bring people to God because that will get you jewels and crown in heaven, but nothing that happens in this life matters, because the only thing that matters is, getting your rewards in heaven, walking on the streets of gold. And the world is so, the world we live in is so bad. It's so bad. Jesus has to deliver us from it. And this is our punishment from, being sinful. That's not the prison planet idea, but just that God is, sickened at us from our sins, and, that Jesus died to save us from our sickening selves, and believing that is the only way that we can get to this place where we will walk on streets of gold after this is all done. Like,
Yeah.
the ways that it doesn't make sense to me, the ways that it never made sense to me astound me. But now that, like I said, the picture is on the puzzle, like it seems like such a psyop. Like not Jesus, but just the idea that you are not to have joy now, that who you are inherently is bad,
Yeah.
you know, and that nothing that you can do will ever bring you to a measure of deserving God's love, but he's going to do it anyway. Like,
Yeah.
that has not been my experience with the Creator.
It's the same with me. And like, so also, so there's the, you know, the high levels of judgment in the New Age to Jesus. Like, what I mean, if anybody's interested, for example, is people who have jumped ship from New Age to Jesus will talk about New Agers in such a scornful way. I just listen and I'm like, it just sounds like smug self-righteousness. Like, oh, I saw the truth and now I'm on the side of the light, and all you people are so deceived. And so there's that piece. But then, like, I'm partway through the Old Testament. I kind of even had to honestly take a little break from it for a while because it's so intense. And I'm reading it and I'm like, none of this resonates with me as the God that I understand and have had personal experience with. And I've had way too much validation through like the readings that I've done, and like people coming back to me later, either in real time during the readings, or coming back to me later, or people writing me about something that has come through in the podcast or something. And, you know, just being like, basically saying, that in a reading, for example, that the information that came true was accurate, but B, more importantly, that it brought them closer to love and like a place of liberation within themselves. And I'm like, that is what God feels like to me. God feels like so much, like, I don't know, the God that I connect with just wants us to know our worth. That's all. Just wants us to know and feel the fullness of our worth, and to know that there is no actual distance between us and God, and that we aren't, like that the message that this place that is so beautiful, this earth that is so beautiful, is like temporary, and we shouldn't be here. Well, it goes back to the whole, like, don't eat the apple, right? It's just like, don't take the temptations. Don't even be here, and be totally virtuous, and be flicking off on and off your light switch 60 times every time you say the prayer, because otherwise something bad is going to happen, because you're so like horrible and disgusting and sinful in your very existence, that, you know, your Creator doesn't really love you, but loves you enough to, you know, send his son to somehow die for your sins. And
it's like one of those like sick, abusive mothers that, like, you know, I'll feed you, I'll give you a place to live, but I'm going to belittle you and tell you every single day what a piece of shit you are. So yeah, I'm checking the boxes and I'm taking care of you. So I'm a good mother. It's like the narcissist mom.
Yes, you're totally right. That is what it is. And it's a really intense program that so many of us carry. And I feel
there's
like
the woman, like being a woman, you know, there's just in Christianity, in most religions, just being a woman, that's you know, you're fucking born dirty.
Yeah. Which is so, I mean, what do you even do with that? How does any healing or resolution ever occur on earth or anywhere if that's a truth? It doesn't feel like universal truth to me at all on any level. And that's just me. I'm like, you know, I never feel like it's my job or my desire to convince people to agree with what I believe in. It's just me sharing my process out loud. But I am always interested to hear like I said, from others who've had an experience in any religion for that matter, that, was more, I would say, like maybe more theological, more biblical, like just a little bit more immersed than mine was. Because sometimes, honestly, sometimes I wonder if I'm just like, do I even know what Christianity means? Like my Christian upbringing was so like watered down. And so yeah, it's interesting for me to hear the
My
perspective
husband
in it deeply.
just started to thunder and hail here. Sorry, it's loud, but my husband grew up, he went to the same church as me briefly, but his mom was very militant in searching for the perfect religion. So do you know what Mennonites are?
Oh yeah, we have tons of them here.
Okay, we have a lot of them here too. So his parents and he went to a Mennonite church for a little while, but then even that wasn't quite right. So his parents' family, along with a couple other really uptight families in the area, started their own home church that, like, most of them dressed like Mennonites, including wearing a head covering. They just didn't go to the church, but they couldn't find anybody who was basically hardcore or militant enough about the Bible and the judgment and, all of that to their standards. So they had to make their own church. And then my husband had his awakening and, left that and took the kids. And so, all of my kids have come from that religious trauma background, but I'm very lucky that all three of my kids are awakened and they have been doing the work to unpack and process all of that trauma. But like my oldest daughter, who maybe when she was like, this is a long time ago now, but when she was just starting her period and I was talking to her about, pads and tampons and, how, the whole process of how babies are made and the cycle and all of that. And I was explaining to her about, you can wear pads for this time, or you can wear tampons for this, or, if you want to go swimming or something like that. And she broke down saying that, everybody in church had told her, all the ladies in church told her that, tampons are sinful and you can never wear a tampon because those can break a barrier that only your husband should break. And if you're to do that, then, it's basically like, what gift do you have to give your husband? And I'm like, this is my 9-year-old telling me this. And I'm like, whoa, I guess if you're thinking you didn't know about crazy Christianity, I didn't know about it until I started unpacking, their shit with them. But
Wow.
we have completely healthy opinions and identities around sexuality, but it's been a crazy 10 years of unpacking all of that.
Yeah. And then you think about the collective, like how many people this is playing out in. It's just very, 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 very intense.
So much shame, just so weighted down with the shame and the pain. And listening to Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, I recommend to anybody who just wants a different framing, because it took a long time for me to, and I'm still working on it sometimes, unpacking the idea of a loving God as opposed to a hateful and judgmental God. But also Eckhart Tolle's explaining Jesus's teaching, or the words in red, depending on what Bible you have. Some Bibles outline what Jesus actually said in red, and those teachings explained from a place of not being a God yourself, but being a fractal of the multidimensional oneness. Like, it makes so much more sense. And his, Jesus's teachings of love and how much, he loved us and how much love he experienced and how much love he felt. And Jesus wasn't all love and light. Jesus was tossing tables and hating on tax collectors and stuff. So he wasn't that version of spirituality, but his teachings from a place of love, they hit a lot different than from a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So, my relationship with Jesus, I joke, I saw a t-shirt a long time ago, like Jesus is my homeboy, like 15 years ago or something like that, when that was funny back then. But yeah, I absolutely, I I love Jesus as, you know, as the person, allegorically as the consciousness, as a being, as an energy. But I do not believe that believing that he was nailed to a cross so that your dirty ass could have a life is the only way to get to heaven. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. I believe that the separation from God that is threatened is what people experience now until they awaken.
And it to me, it totally makes sense that, like, you know, I personally believe that Satan is real, whether Satan is, I think Satan is like the opposite of God, the antithesis. Like, so when I'm talking about Satan, I'm not talking about like some kind of human or something like that. But um, if let's just use the word the devil, if the devil is real and the devil, basically wants to like fuck God over, then it makes sense that all tactics would be around gaslighting the shit out of humans so that they believe that they are unworthy to be in the presence of God, and that they are born sinners. Like, just gaslighting them and making them vibrate more in the place of perceived separation from God, when in fact the truth is that, like, God's love is accessible and available 100% of the time to us in like endless, infinite, bountiful measures, and we are the ones that get to attune to it. But if we are filled with like the programs that tell us that we are unworthy or we should be ashamed of yourselves, like your dad, like somebody in a position of authority, perceived authority, spoke over him that his soul is cast to the devil, as if that man even had any kind of like power to cast anybody's soul anywhere. And so your dad had this experience of like, intense, like shame spiraling separation from God that took him into extremely dark places and had a ripple effect on his whole family, and I'm sure like friends and whatever.
Oh
um
yeah.
and like, to me, that is the work of the devil. That is the work of the devil.
Yes. I guess when I look at it, where do you, sorry, I'm processing as I think here. Is that not what his soul chose? Speaking of my dad personally, like, yeah, did he not, he chose to have this experience, right? He chose to go through this, and he's still fighting the effects of it today. He's still in that shame spiral. He's still a drug user. He's still the most, like, if he had those little mini Bibles, he would hand them out to people. There's nobody he meets he doesn't talk to Jesus about. He witnesses to everybody, but he's still in that place. But is it not what his soul chose for this incarnation to experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you what my theory is. I, of
There you
course,
go.
know it for certain, but I believe that part of the false matrix, the thing that makes it a prison planet, even though we create our own prison bars, is like we are programmed to create our own prison bars. And I do believe that there is a consciousness that is orchestrating this from behind the scenes that one could call the devil. And I believe that, or like, the elites, like you and I have exchanges where we're just like, we can see the dark actors. So the dark actors, whoever they represent, I believe that they use us as an energy source, because when they separated from God to the extent that they did, they no longer get the sort of the like resourcing from that light. And so they have to siphon light off of others. And they kind of turned us into like a little ant colony petri dish farm, or like a beehive. Like, we are producing something for them that they live off of. And in order to keep us here, they fragment our consciousness more and more and more with all this trauma all the time. And like trauma on so many levels, so that when basically somebody's consciousness can't ascend to that place of like awakening and self-realization, self-actualization. So they stay kind of stunted at some point, and they receive more and more trauma, and they disassociate because they don't know how to deal with it. And they create more and more like little fragment, like missing soul aspects. And when they die, I believe that what's supposed to happen is when you die, you're supposed to go straight out of here, like you and I, and tick off the things on your deli sandwich sheet, like fully a total free will experience of like, yeah, it's an intense place to go, to some degree or another, depending on what's going on earth at a given time. And these are the things that I want to accomplish. These are the things I want to experience and integrate, but it's a free will thing. And I think for a lot of souls, when the person that they are in a given life dies under the influence of a ton of trauma, then they can't get out. Like there's a net that they can't get past. And so they just kind of recycle back in to another life that has a similar theme or pattern. And so that they can like try and work it out again. So in a sense, they've chosen it, but it's not from a fully awakened conscious place of sovereignty.
So what can get, from where you see it, what can get them to a place where they can move through that or move past that?
Well, that's what I think the return of Christ is. I really believe it's a Christ.
That's what you think the rapture is?
To some degree. I mean, I don't know, because I have not studied. I haven't read the full book of Revelation, so I don't fully know what the rapture is. But I believe that a lot of us have come in at this time with, I just call them cheat codes. It's like we have certain cheat codes. We don't have all the cheat codes, but we have certain cheat codes, which is why it's important that we come together and share them and swap them so we can fill in the whole puzzle. But we also come in with an ability, like you experienced, to move through a shit ton of trauma and have it ultimately lead to our awakening and our ability to see things for what they are. And then also the ability to face that shadow and process it, so that we're not, spending our lives and all of our energy avoiding those painful memories and those painful emotions that need to come up and be processed. And so I believe that basically as we do that process, we ascend in our own consciousness to be Christ-like, is how I will put it. And then, just like you described with those little iron shavings to the magnet, we hold a frequency that is even possible, that allows others around us to, like, when they go through their dark night of the soul and they're like, what the fuck is happening? And they like, they're falling apart. It's like, that is the point where we're like, I see you're puking. Here's a bowl. Let me wipe your mouth. Here's a damp cloth. You got this. This is how it's done. It's okay. This is all an illusion, while it's also very real at the same time. And so I believe like they just got lodged in a place of darkness where they couldn't retrieve those other soul fragments. And that's why I do believe that it's important that there are so many healers, that like no healing modality. This is one of the things I heard in the New Age to Jesus thing that almost did it for me, was I agreed that there is a sense of like, you can be on an eternal healing journey in the New Age where you're looking for healing. You're going to so many healers and you're spending a lot of money, and, and you never fully get healed. And they say that Jesus is the only one that healed us completely. And I believe that, and I believe that what it means, like whether somebody believes in Jesus as a like historical figure that lived, or as a representation of a level of consciousness that is available to us, and a degree of love that we can be vibrating in as our baseline frequency. I believe that direct connection to God that Jesus symbolizes is the thing that heals it all. That love heals everything. But when we're broken and super duper fragmented, sometimes we're not ready to receive that whole bolus of love all in one go. We need to go to a shaman and experience a soul retrieval and have like one piece come back. Or we need to go to an Akashic reader and see like 2 past lives and really process it. We're not like it's like cookie crumbs leading us to the place where we can actually understand ourselves as being worthy enough to just be connected to God. And that's what ultimately comes in and completely heals everything. So I think we're all working on it together. And I really feel like a lot of us are here on a rescue mission. Like we're just like, damn, a lot of the consciousness has gotten lost in the darkness, and we're just gonna, keep throwing out like life buoys and pulling pieces back in.
I have done, I mentioned Doreen Virtue just because I did a little reading and a little listening to her basically when she made her big switch. And I actually, it's funny to hear you say New Age to Jesus. It almost like it sounds like a highway. Yeah. Got off on the New Age to Jesus, but like I didn't know that it was such a prevalent thing, I guess. But I'd be interested to know how many people in that community started at Jesus, went, had a spiritual awakening, or went New Age, but then went back to Jesus. Because a big part for me in my spiritual awakening was the recognition of the constant lifelong searching for salvation or something outside me. And so
yeah,
that seems like a going back to that for me. Mm-hmm. in saying that the ultimate, the ultimate healing. I mean, the whatever you want to call it, God, the one infinite source created that holds all of the everything, that has a superior, all-encompassing energy. But to put it on Jesus or on anything even higher vibrational than ourselves, aren't we taking away that sovereignty that we're supposed to have as creator beings?
Yeah, well, totally. It makes us into like lost victims, like literally lost sheep waiting to be rescued by somebody. Yeah. Which reminds me of Q, which reminds me of the Flash. And I feel like the Flash probably is like a New Age version of the Rapture. Just having looked into it a little bit, like if you're just always waiting and biding your time until your rescuer comes, I mean, that seems like a very problematic, like, why would it even have to be that way? But I do believe that, like, I mean, so my favorite, I've always been drawn to Catholic iconography, but I was not raised Catholic, but I've been like so drawn to it. A lot of it. I don't know anything about the saints. I don't really care, but the imagery of the dove, the imagery of Mother Mary and her Sacred Heart, the imagery of Jesus and his Sacred Heart, all of those things have been really meaningful to me. Do not vibe with the like crucified corpse of Christ at all. I think that is a very weird ritual. However, when I look at the images of Jesus pointing at his heart and his 2 fingers are pointing to heaven, so he's like this, he's pointing at his heart, and his heart, in some images, it's pierced by a sword. In other images, it is wrapped in thorns, and it sometimes is bleeding, but it's always like luminous. Almost like, it almost looks like it's on fire, but to me, it's like this brilliant light is coming off of it. And I feel like it is a code that's telling you the portal is through your heart. Your direct connection to God is in your heart. You don't need anyone. You don't need me. I'm just telling you how to get there. That's all. And that your heart can withstand all of the pain here, all of it. It doesn't mean like, I don't want people to go through pain at all, but our heart is so fucking powerful that the pain in no way diminishes it. the feeling of being diminished is a perspective of the mind. The heart, at every pierce of the sword or every, like puncture of the thorn or whatever, only unleashes more of the light that is in the heart. It only, like you were describing with your dark night of the soul that you experienced after, I think you said it was your uncle that had that
It
devastating accident.
it was, he was like a brother to me. Yeah. Became a quadriplegic.
And you went like to the rock bottom, to the
Oh,
floor, to the darkest, darkest, darkest place. And what did you find there? Light. And a love that has allowed you to be who you are now. And that's what I found with Killian. And that's why I'm like, he's my greatest gift. I wouldn't change it. I mean, I wouldn't. Even there's a part of my brain that's like, well, wouldn't you love to have your son here alive with you? That's just not how it was supposed to go. He gave a gift and is the biggest gift that set me free, where I was like, oh, in that place of suffocating darkness, there is light if you choose it, because the light will never impose itself on you. The love of God will never impose itself on you. That's the antithesis of free will, but it's there. And when you get to that place of darkness where there's no deeper to go, is often the place we need to get to in order to just completely surrender and allow it in. But it's available to us at all times. We don't need to go, through those horrible things just to access that love. But it's kind of like seems to be a human thing, that it's a profound catalyst that allows us to accept it.
no, it really is a profound catalyst. And I know you don't need my validation, but hearing your humble surety and your ability to like question yourself and be like, wouldn't I rather have my son here? And then for you to be like, I understand what he was here to teach me. I understand what he went through, because I know what he came to work through on his own, and I know what you got out of it. But your ability and your strength to say that is just such a like a high vibrational place to love and teach from, for you to have that, because so many other people might, like, if you were to say that to them about their circumstance, they might think that, oh, you don't understand, you can't possibly understand my grief. But you're speaking about yourself having gone through the worst thing that I personally think that a person can go through, losing a child. You went through it, and you see the beauty and the grace in it, and what it has allowed, like how many people have been affected through you. How many lives have you personally changed through what Killian gave to you? Like thousands and thousands. That's so amazing. Like, but for you to be able to see it and say it with a smile on your face, it's one of the things that makes you just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. I received that, and it's just, thank you for reflecting that, because honestly, like, Killian is I don't know, he's kind of like my anchor point that I think allows me to come up close to the darkness and not actually get the seductive darkness, that can take us into directions of being basically like selfish and self-serving and stuff like that. And because this whole version of myself that I am now was birthed at the moment of his conception, and then his birth, and then his death, the whole thing. But like in my mind, it still feels weird to call it a business, even though it operates like a business. But the thing that I do is a monument to him. It's like, you completely gave me like the gift of the greatest freedom, and it's 222 here. But like, I even feel free of the fear of death. I feel free of the fear of death of my loved ones, even though I'm not looking forward to it. Like, if I think about, for example, one of my sisters dying, like, that will shatter me again, because it's still painful, so painful. But I actually don't feel like I lost anything with Killian. I feel like I have a son. I have 4 children and his body just isn't here. But, you know, I gained, I don't know, feels like I gained everything.
I know that you are a Harry Potter nerd like me, and that could be, I mean, we could have hours and hours of discussion on the awakening process and Harry Potter, in all the way down to the numerologies and, you know, all of the synchronicities of what's happening now. But I think of that time, I think it's in the 7th book, when Ron took off on Harry and Hermione, but then he comes back when there's Harry jumps into the frozen lake wearing the Horcrux and he's going to drown, right? I feel like you have the ability to be Ron to a lot of Harrys that are choking with that Horcrux, dragging them down, not even realizing what it is that's pulling them down. And then, you know, you figured out, but you know, you're not saving people. It's because you've already swam through it and you know that everybody will be fine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to swim down to the bottom of the dark pool when you've already done it once and you know that you can make it up. Everybody's floating on the top and they're way too afraid to go down because they don't know what's down there, and you're like, it's fine. I mean, it's dark and scary down there, but you'll live. Yeah. And once you come back up, this oxygen is going to taste so good. You don't even know.
Totally.
Best oxygen of your life. You don't even know.
Totally. It actually reminds me of, somebody shared a reel with me today and I reposted it to my stories, but it's like this crazy ride at a carnival, and like, you know, people are like, ah, and this one guy is on it, this big dude, and he's like, I think it's like My Pony. I can't remember who sings that song.
No,
but
it wasn't the one where you're like, when they're going through their dark night of the soul, you've already had like 5.
Totally. He's just
It's fine.
So totally. It's like, this is how you do it. It's all good.
I saw a meme like that too. It was, I think it's the creepy little girl by a fire truck and the house is on fire behind her. And she's just deadpan in the face, absolutely no expression, but that's what it feels like. You know, everybody's having a dark night of soul, but it's fine. You'll be okay. Once your whole life completely shatters and you have a couple ego deaths, you'll be great.
You'll be fine. Yeah.
When you don't recognize yourself at all, you will be fine.
Literally. Oh my God. And I actually feel like that's what this whole year is going to be. It's like, this is the month it starts. I knew January and February were just going to be kind of chill, get your shit in order. You're getting ready. Like, it's like you're getting your snacks from the concession booth. You're getting ready for the show. And March is like, oh, it's popping. And for the rest of the year, people are just going to be like, what the fuck is happening? And we're going to be like,
so do you think that the what the fuck is happening, do you think it's going to be, as a general rule, mostly people who are not awake yet? Mm-hmm. Do you think that people who have, because that's the vibe I'm getting, the people who've been awake, or at least kind of awake, we're going to be like,
totally. Yeah,
whatever.
I feel like the people who already are in my communities, just as an example, but of course, like, there are many who aren't and are in other similar communities, but who, you know, I'm not saying that everybody, because I know sometimes there are people who are brand newly awakened, so they still are processing it and it might feel a little bit turbulent, but I think the real combustive experience is going to be all of those who, this is their first awakening. This is their first realization that, holy fuck, we're in a false matrix. And like, it's going to be so intense. And literally the rest of us are just going to be eating our popcorn and, you know, our M&Ms, and we're going to be like, it's okay. And like, we're not even going to feel the need to rush in and save them. We're just going to be sitting here, like, eating it, kind of enjoying
holding that puke bucket, like, you're fine.
Yes. And then in those moments where they finally, it's kind of like when a toddler is freaking the fuck out and you're just like, there's no point in me trying to talk to you right now because you're just screaming. And so you're just chilling out for a minute, and then they have a moment where, like, they run out of gas on their scream and there's silence, and then you're like, look me in the eyes, let's talk. I feel like
are you done? Okay, are you done?
And then often they're like, no, and you're like, okay, just gonna go back to eating.
Do you think it's gonna come in the form of like big natural disasters? Is it gonna be like Epstein disclosure, or the COVID Wuhan disclosure? What's it gonna be?
I
What's
think
what's your flavor?
my personal flavor is probably going to be like, yeah,
All the above?
like this, probably all of the above, but I'm feeling more like disclosure in terms of like political corruption that is so undeniable that, people who really just wanted to believe that the government is just somehow terribly inept, but they really have our best interests at heart, they're going to, most of them are going to surrender. They're going to concede and be like, fuck, it's not what I thought it was. But I think that there are going to be a couple people like that are just like, they're like, I'm going to die on this hill, but they're going to know that they're choosing to die on this hill. Like they can't pretend anymore
This
that,
miserable,
like
stubborn.
Percy Weasley, right?
Yeah.
Well, Percy eventually comes around, but for a long time, he's like, no, I've chosen this side. And despite all evidence to the contrary, this is where I am. I actually think that Percy Weasley is the perfect analogy for the majority of humanity. Like at the very last minute, he defects to the side, like he has a change of heart. I think the people that we truly are going to feel are like lost causes. Like you remember in 2020 and 2021, when there was a lot of conversation about the bifurcation of the timelines,
Mm-hmm.
and people were really worried that like, what about my loved ones? What if my loved ones choose a different timeline? Are we going to be separated? Like, what's it going to look like? How's this going to work? And I kept going into the records, and every time I was like 99.7% of humanity chooses to like rise to the higher timeline, so to speak, just to use that jargon. But a good number of them literally choose it at the last minute. And who cares, really? Who cares? I mean, I know it's hard for us to be in relationships with people that we love that are being Percy Weasleys. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like even if they choose last minute, it's no skin off our ass. They just have to go through their process. So I think that I think that
all roads are leading to the same place, and there's no award. Like,
yes, it's true. It's true. And honestly, the souls that I feel don't choose to defect, like this is some very, very like high dimensional vantage point that can easily be construed into spiritual bypassing, which I do not advocate. But I feel like in order for these realities to even exist, there has to be a second dimensional polarity, meaning there has to be an evil and there has to be a love. In order for it's been super balanced towards the evil. And right now, like that is the bifurcation is like, we can't play in the gray zone anymore and pretend that the gray zone is a real thing. In the 90s, 2000s, it was all about the gray zone. Just fucking have fun, do your Y2K thing, listen to your pop music, don't question any of it, just have a good time. Those days are gone. Now as we were talking about on the Patreon group hug call, we can't even freaking listen to a song anymore because like it better be high vibe, like pure consciousness shit. Otherwise, doesn't matter how much of an earworm it is, you're taking on like demonic frequencies. So we don't get to be in that gray zone of like ignorance is bliss anymore. We are having to pick. Are we on the side of the darkness, the extreme, like self-serving, consciousness group, or are we going to the light? And that was kind of my, like, so to speak, come to Jesus, dark night of the soul in November and December. Not that I ever thought I wasn't on the side of the light, but it's like I really had to choose, and I had to see both of them with intense clarity and be like, you can't just say you're choosing, like you have to walk your talk. You have to actually choose. And I really feel like the majority of souls are going to choose the light because it's a million, billion, gajillion times better. And the small, tiny percentage that choose the darkness, I honestly think it's because somebody has to in order to hold that polarity in place in order for free will to even exist at all. Because if everybody is in a state of light, all creatures in a state of light, there is no free will. Like, it's such a beautiful thing that we get to be humans, and we're like agents of change and agents of cause. We are the cause that creates effect, and we have free will. It's an amazing thing. It's just been super, out of balance.
So that 0.3% or whatever you said, do you think that is like, those are the Monsters Inc. elites that are so disconnected from source that they don't have the access to go? I guess they could have access if they wanted, but because of the way they live, they choose not to ascend. Do you think those are the only ones? Or are there just, your average?
I think even a lot of them defect. I think they actually, truly, I think a lot of them are like aching for it. That is their greatest desire. And yet they are inhabiting such a level of darkness that they have like a sociopathic, like, disconnection from the heart. They can't even fucking find it. Like, they can't even fathom it as a possibility, which is why I believe that a lot of us are here on like an extreme rescue mission. And when I kind of see the way the whole thing goes, it feels like this beautiful, like, almost everybody, like, this could be the rapture, I don't know, almost everybody returns to the light. And for this like grand, glorious moment, maybe every single thing returns to the light. And then, but it's just brief. And then the light and the darkness separate again, but the darkness is very small again. And then we go through this whole thing again. That's what it feels like to me. And it doesn't feel like hopeless at all. It feels extremely beautiful. And like, God, what else would we do? Just exist in like placid harmony for all of eternity?
Yeah, like, I told you about that, the experience I had with the beings earlier in the year. And basically what they told me was like, we beings incarnate on earth for the drama and the trauma and the experience, because they didn't use the word boring. They were very eloquent, of course, in how they communicated, but like in these other dimensional realities, there's not this duality and not this constant contrarian life that provides for such texture and for a really vivid experience. And the duality is why we do it. The scraping our faces on a cheese grater for 70 years is why we do it, because it's an experience, because peace and love and harmony and light all the time is a little repetitive, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I agree so much. And I feel like it's hard to hear it when you're in, like, if you're, going through a prolonged period of trauma where you feel literally at the mercy of, like, let's say the legal system or something, right? Like a bigger thing outside of you. And like, it's probably super annoying to hear messages like that. But, I don't know. I also recently discovered the book Existential Kink by Carolyn something or other. Everybody look it up. It's totally worth listening to, because she just figures out how to like go into your shittiest emotions and like get off on it. Like, not necessarily physically orgasm, although I did that a couple times, so it was fun. But just like to like get an existential kink. Like, she was talking about, you're like a cosmic pain slut and you just love, you love the pain that you've subjected yourself to on a cosmic level. And it really helped me to alchemize things that I, like, very quickly, within a matter of days, that I've struggled with for years. I was like, yeah, she's right. Like, if we can just sort of like revel in the exquisite, I don't know, intensity of our emotional states, and know that as we do that, it can just pass, like, it can pass through us, because we're not like, I think a lot of our human misery comes from, we have emotions and they're so uncomfortable, like anxiety, for instance, such an uncomfortable emotion. And or state of being. And it's very natural that when we get anxiety, our thoughts are like, what do I do to make it go away? I got to make this stop. Where did this come from? How do I feel better? Whatever, I mean, that's what my mind does. And
Mhm.
but if we can sort of like just soften into it and be like, okay, like it actually isn't going to last forever if I can just let it be here and do what it's here to do. And maybe I don't even need to know on a conscious level what it's here to do. But like my body is smart. This is a cascade of chemicals. My body's trying to tell me something. What if I just let myself be in anxiety? Then it usually passes pretty quickly, but we block it when we're like spinning out because we don't let it do the thing that it's supposed to do.
Exactly. You reminded me, do you know what combo is?
No. Oh, wait, the frog thing?
Frog medicine, yeah. I've done that several times. It's non-hallucinogenic. It's an Amazonian frog medicine that is, you burn a couple dots under your skin. A practitioner burns a couple dots under your skin with an incense stick, wipes the first layer off, and then puts the medicine on your skin, and you drink like 1.5 liters of water in 10 minutes. And you do it on an empty stomach. So it's a purgative. You not everybody throws up, most people do, but some people sweat, some people cry, moan, laugh, whatever. But it's over in 15 minutes. Like the whole thing is over in 15 minutes. And it's basically like a lifetime of cleansing you of anxiety, depression, heavy metals, parasites, and basically any kind of trauma it gets rid of. But it is a very intense experience that like you just feel like shit. It's like having 10 hangovers at once. Like you're a little low blood pressure, and then you flush a little bit, and then your heart races a little bit, and then it stops, and then you want to be sick. But if you sit with it, if you sit with that discomfort and really allow it to wash over you and just recognize this is not going to last forever. I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay. After this moves through me, I'm going to have so much clarity. I'm going to have so much space. I'm going to have so much perspective, not even if it's something other than the medicine. It doesn't have to be the medicine. Anytime we have this shit come up with us that we want to run away from because it's uncomfortable, every time we sit with it and allow it to happen, it's pretty much it. Like a lot of times it doesn't come back. A lot of times that thing that's been chasing us for 5 years or 5 months or our whole lives, if we just give it that tiny little bit of space to completely take over and run its course and just make its way through our nervous system, and then we let it go, then it's done.
Yes, totally.
It's done.
That's exactly it. And when you think about the number of people, like when I think about, say, for example, our parents' generations, because the majority of them didn't know this. They had no idea. Like it's not because we're somehow like better or whatever. It's just like we have access to that information and they didn't. And so they were operating under that whole like World War II, like keep calm, carry on sort of mentality, which is like deny the shit out of the thing that is haunting you and like refuse to look at it and spend. I just think about them and I'm like, so much of their energy is going to that. How can you create the life of your dreams? How can you possibly create a new timeline? How can you even timeline jump? How can you do anything creative that brings you joy, that's like is a monument to you and everything you've been through, when you're putting so much energy into basically trying to run away from this thing that just needs you to sit with it briefly, just briefly. That's the irony of it. But I know it feels so intense. It feels so intense that like for some people, especially if they've had if they've had like horrendous childhood abuse or something like that, I definitely advocate for working with somebody like a practitioner that you feel safe with, or somebody, a friend, anybody that really truly has your back. But it feels like it's going to devour you and you're going to die, but you're not. And it's finally going to be gone. Like you said, it runs through the nervous system. And then,
but so many people, like you said, I mean, generations of people, and even people now who, yes, they may have access to, Instagram or TikTok or something like that, but spending all of your time making your priority just trying to survive, just trying to get through the day is so hard when you're trying to get past that, when you're trying to stuff that anxiety down, if you're trying to take care of kids or take care of a house and you feel that like, you feel like you're going to have a heart attack, you feel like your throat is closing off, and everything that you're doing is trying to just convince yourself to swallow or convince yourself to take another step or convince yourself to not lose it while you feed the kids, or clean the house, or, continue having a functioning life while you suffer with these traumas that come up. It can seem flippant to say, take the time to do the thing. But like I told my sister, because I'm trying to get her to do combo, I'm like, the 15 minutes that you have to sit with the discomfort and combo, if you put that in one hand, how much does it weigh compared to the 35 years that you've been suffering every single day, every day, unable to, like you said, unable to get out of fight or flight into rest and digest, into a place where you can create. And I know that it's not easy. I lived my life there, but it's so much less painful to feel that pain for just a minute rather than to fucking drag it on forever.
Absolutely. Is combo, is it legal in the United States?
I actually I don't think it's illegal anywhere. It's because it's not a drug. It's it's a secretion from frog.
Yeah, so just basically it causes you to like purge.
Yeah, it's
excavate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people do it in a more gentle fashion. Like you can, like the more dots you do, the more intense experience that you have. The warriors in the jungle use it for clearing depression or anxiety, or also before going on like a soul quest or like a long hunting journey, because it gives you so much vitality. But the biggest thing for me was like clearing that anxiety from living in a constant state of survival, wondering, because I was awake and as Claire gifted as you could imagine, before I had good boundaries, really being able to read people's thoughts, in proximity to an embarrassing, inappropriate degree that I had to fix. But I could do all that. I could feel everything. I could predict lots of stuff, but I could not manifest anything other than more money problems and more scarcity and more things to make me feel anxious about until I did that healing of my nervous system. Like it was just impossible for me. And I think a lot of people are stuck in that place of being unable to create or get more for themselves because they're too afraid to allow that shit to move through so that it can be gone.
Yeah, because you're always in a state of being clenched because some big scary thing that is asking to be processed, and you're like, I can't. And so like, even when you're not consciously thinking about it, you're just always clenched. And if you're clenched, then where's the money going to land? Where's the relationship going to land? Where's the new job? Where's the new friend? All the things that we want, like that has to come into a softened, open, like body and aura.
It can't bounce off the shell of density and fear.
Yeah, totally. Ashley, this is such a good conversation. We recorded way longer than I initially had said, but it was just too good. I couldn't stop it. I'm even remiss to stop it now, but we'll definitely have to do it again for the podcast, because I also know that you have some very interesting experiences with extraterrestrial beings that we only like just barely, like we glossed over it.
I
And
thought that too. I was like, crap, we were going to talk about aliens. I forgot about aliens today.
yeah, so we will have to do it again sooner than later, of course. But thank you so much for being here and just for sharing your perspective and your stories. Like really, really profound, really beautiful to hear.
Thank you for having me. It's always great to be in your company.
Thanks, Ashley. And
Yeah.
thank you, beautiful listeners. Let us know if you enjoyed it. Comment on YouTube if you catch it on YouTube, or is your social media handle, you shared it, right? It'll be in the show notes.
I think I gave it to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Check out Ashley's online shop because she has beautiful paintings and beautiful jewelry. And if you enjoyed this episode, then, like send us some love in a DM, or tag us and like screenshot it and tag us and share it in your stories or something like that, because we appreciate you listeners, and it is all about community in 2023. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ashley. Have an amazing day or night wherever you are, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Well, that's a wrap. I truly hope that you enjoyed the episode and that you got some good activations, insights, and inspirations from what was shared today. I want to remind you that you can review the show on Apple Podcasts for a chance to win a free 45-minute Akashic Records reading with me to be shared on the show. Just remember to screenshot your review before you submit it and send it via email to amy@thenorthstarguidance.com to be entered into the monthly draw. I want to thank my Patreon members from the bottom of my heart for supporting this show. You guys, you cannot possibly know what your support means to me. Seriously. If everything else in my business had to be shut down, the podcast is the thing that I want to keep going, and your support means that it can keep going. On Patreon, I share bonus conversations, gifts from my guests, weekly dope-ass energy reports, quarterly group hug calls, and more. To become a supporter, use the link in the show notes and head on over to my Patreon. And I want to give a shout out to May, who edits all of these podcasts, as well as the Goddess Support team for all that they do to keep this operation running smoothly. Finally, I want to thank you, beautiful listener, for the valuable currency of your time and attention. I do not take it for granted. You are a powerful creator, and may everything in this podcast serve you in your highest creations. Your listenership means the world to me. Truly, truly. Without you, I would just be talking to myself. So, my beloved listener, have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next episode.